And then with that, I'd like to introduce you all to Jodie Sue Kelly. She is here to speak to us today about customer journey mapping. And if those of you know her, she needs no introduction. For those of you who don't, I'll let Jodie introduce herself.
So, good afternoon, everyone. I actually am really glad to be with you here today. I was just telling Amy, my husband fell on the ice last week, and I've spent most of the time in the hospital in surgery and stuff. So, I'm happy for any distraction other than medical. Anyway, I have spent most of my career working with public agencies and partners who are everybody like you guys, deeply committed to the mission, primarily of helping people get work or working closely with employers in order to, build a stronger economic base. And also people who are just grappling with how to make services more responsive to the people that they serve. So much of my work has really focused on supporting frontline practitioners with a particular emphasis on motivation, on engagement, and what customer centered really looks like in day-to-day practice. So a lot of the work that you're doing right now and you're about to embark on is being described as customer-centered design. And at its core, that simply means designing programs and systems and services based on how people actually experience them, not just how they're supposed to work on paper. So I know in the room I have a mix. Some of you have been through a version of this training, the ones who raised their hands. For others, this may be newer. So think of today, I guess, for some of you as a refresher and a way to sharpen how you're already thinking about customer-centered design and practice. And for others, it will be an introduction, at least to my version of it. I know that you're all working at different levels, trainers, agency partners, DCO staff, but you're all dealing with the same reality. Programs that matter, having limited resources, and customers whose engagement really isn't always that predictable. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to walk through one practical and I think repeatable tool for customer centered design, and it's called customer journey mapping. Customer journey mapping helps you to see the experience that your customers are actually having so that when engagement drops or things don't work as expected, you have a structured way to understand why and decide what to do next. So to ground this, I want to start with just a quick, like everyday example. I think something we've all experienced before we apply it to workforce and business-facing programs. So let me start with this. Imagine that you're on your way to work and you stop for coffee. You walk in to this coffee shop. You haven't been there before. The line is long, and the menu for you isn't really clear. Their baristas look rushed, and you're not really sure where you're supposed to stand or what you do next. You get your coffee, but you leave sort of annoyed and thinking, I don't know if I'm coming back here. Like that, it's almost embarrassing because you don't even know how to buy a cup of coffee. Nothing was technically wrong. You got the coffee, but the experience made you think it's just not worth it. So that entire experience from walking in the door to walking out, that's a customer journey, a short one. But I want you to imagine the opposite. You walk into this coffee shop, the space is clear. Someone greets you as you walk in the door. You know where to order and what to do because it's got good signage. You're not guessing or scanning the room for clues. The coffee's the same. But this time you leave thinking, wow, that was really easy. I like this place. I think I'll come back. The difference isn't the product, it's the journey. And nothing about the product itself changed. What changed was the experience that you've had. So this story that I'm telling you, honestly, really is not about coffee. It's about how systems work or don't work from the customer's point of view. That same dynamic shows up in public programs every day. So public programs work pretty much the same way in that customers don't just experience your service, they experience the process. So the calls, the intake, the waiting, the questions. And then for businesses, although it could also work for businesses, but I was thinking more of participants. But for the businesses, it's like the outreach and the response time. How long does it take somebody to get back to them, and whether anybody follows up, just to name a few of those steps. And so, just like with that coffee shop, people make decisions consciously or unconsciously based on how an experience feels. So those decisions show up as engagement, as follow up, follow through, drop off. So that entire experience from start to finish is what, in workforce we would mean as a customer journey. So journey mapping, which is what we're going to look at here, is simply a way to make that experience visible. So you can see where things are working and where your customers, regardless of business or job seekers, or whatever group that you're working with, like where it's not working. So what the coffee shop example kind of shows us is isn't just what customer journeys are, but it shows us why experience matters more than what we think. Most of the time, and I know that some of you are going to go out and train. And so, one of the things that you'll want to get across to the people that you're training is that most of the time, we only see our programs from the inside. Like we look at the steps we built. We, try to build in the rules we have to follow, the services that we offer. And what customer journey mapping is trying to do, and what I'm going to show you how to do it here, is how do you flip that perspective? So instead of looking at the program from the staff side, we lay out what it actually looks like from the customer's point of view, from start to finish. Not just one appointment, not just one form or, one piece of the process, but the full experience as it unfolds over time. So when we make this experience visible, then two things happen. One is that you start to notice where people get confused or where they hesitate or, where perhaps they go so far as even to drop out and you're trying to then later on re-engage them. And the second thing that you'll notice is that things like when you plot them and when you look at them and they're on paper, things that felt very normal on paper suddenly look very, very different when you see them as this sequence of experiences. And that shift from how a program is designed to how it is actually experienced is what I think matters most in our work. So I want to start by explaining, why I think this is actually worth 90 minutes of your time. Well, first of all, because I make really nice slides. I'm kidding. Is that I think that most challenges that agencies struggle with, missed appointments, drop off, low engagement, people not following through, they aren't happening because like staff don't care or staff aren't working hard enough. And I think that's true whether or not we're talking about job seekers or businesses trying to just navigate these public systems. In most cases, the challenges, all these challenges, missed appointments, dropping off, whatever, those are signals. They are telling us, it's a signal that is telling us something about the experience that we have designed, not the motivation, not the commitment, not the character of the people or partner that we serve. That's not the issue. The issue is that there's something about the way we designed this that isn't working from the customer's perspective and the experience that they're having. So again, customer journey mapping gives us a way to slow down and just, in a sense, ask a different question. Instead of asking, why don't people do this? Or why don't people comply? Or, why don't people follow the system? We ask, where within our system does the experience make it easy to move forward? And where does it create confusion, friction, frustration, unnecessary effort. So that question, again, it applies as much to a job seeker deciding whether to show up as it does a business deciding whether or not it's worth continuing to engage. So when a business reaches out about expanding, about hiring, about incentives or, tax incentives, tax credits, the way the first call, the follow up, the handoff, all of that, how that feels often determines whether they will stay engaged or quietly just decide it's not really worth my effort. So if we can see all of that clearly, we can make changes and improve engagement and the outcomes without adding more work, without more rules, without more frustration for participants or employers. So that's why I think customer journey mapping really does matter so much in public programs. So when we talk about customer-centered design, to me, that's what this is all what we mean in practice. It's not a philosophy. It's a way to see where the experience is helping people move forward and where it is quietly, and maybe sometimes not so quietly, getting in the way. So this work can sound really big, but it's actually really doable and easy and I'm going to take you through the steps. And so what you'll leave with today is a repeatable process. So if you're doing training, you should be able to, and I will send you the overheads. Well, I'll send them to Amy and Amy will send them to you guys. But it's a repeatable process. And so I think it's something that you realistically can use in your own training. You could use it as a staff retreat. You could use it as a series of staff meetings. You can use it as a training session, an all-day training session. Lots of different ways that you can use it. You can use it in individual units, like the employer service unit, or you could use it in the intake unit. It just depends on where it is you want to begin, or it can also be agency wide. Anybody who's in the training would leave with a shared language. And I think when people talk about shared language, when we talk with the same terms, it just gets a lot clearer and it's a lot frustrating. And some of you have been with me, you'll know, like you can just say pain point, and we know exactly what that means. So you're going to leave this practical tools, no, not a lot of theory, tiny, no jargon, just useful ways to be able to step back and look at the program with fresh eyes. So, what makes this, I think, especially important in public programs is that just small points of friction add up really fast. And I think that is especially true even on the business side, although I think it's true on the participant side as well. So let's name one thing or just say one thing, and I'll say this very quickly, but public systems are just complicated by design. Nothing you can do about it. Programs are layered over time, policies change, funding streams change, legislation change, the Department of Labor changes rules. Very few programs have the luxury of being designed from scratch with customer service fully in mind. What often happens instead is that the program just keeps evolving in order to meet administrative needs, funder needs, monitoring, etc. And the customer experience ends up becomes something that we assume, I guess, is fine unless somebody complains or like we look at numbers and see, hey, we're losing a lot of people. So customer journey mapping gives us this permission to stop assuming and start really looking at what is going on. So we have to look at what is happening to customers as they move through the system. Again, quickly, the throughout the journey, I think customers are constantly on no matter what side are evaluating value even without realizing it. I mean, they're asking themselves questions like, is this worth my time? Do these people understand my situation? Am I being respected? And when the answer to those questions is yes, people tend to stay engaged. But when the answer becomes, I am not sure, then disengagement makes sense even when the program is well designed. Customer journey mapping helps us to see where those doubts start creep in so that we can design an experience that supports success instead of, sort of working against us. I was thinking about this as I was putting this together. We have right up the road from my house, we have a dollar, I think it's Family Dollar, might be Dollar General, honestly. They're to me they're all the same, one size fit all. They should be the $5 General now, I guess. But anyway, it's less than a mile from my house. I love it because when they put it it's quick in, quick out, wide variety of products. So it's like, oh shoot, I got home from the grocery store, I forgot milk. I could just run up to the Family Dollar and get it. It's low cost. And so to me, the value was worth it. Like to just run up and pick up, or I need a tablecloth, a plastic tablecloth because we're having a picnic. I'll just run up there and grab it, like little things. But now I have to say, I went in recently, it's totally understaffed. So there is a huge line at the cash register. It's like it'd take you a half hour to check out, and then all of a sudden it's not worth it. I'd rather go back to the grocery store. It's understaffed. It's also dirty, and I guess it's dirty because it's understaffed. Like entire sections of the shelving is not only empty, but some of it's been moved and they never even swept up where the shelves used to be. The products are disorganized. I mean, it looks like it's going out of business, but it's not. So anyway, the net result is I have decided it's just not worth it. And so they've lost a customer. And so again, like customers are always in a position of like evaluating the value of a thing. So one of the hardest things about doing this work, I think, and even, I mean, I see people struggle with it when I'm doing workshops, live workshops, and I'm watching how groups work. But one of the hardest parts is separating in our minds what's like easy from a staff perspective to what actually works best for customers, because that's oftentimes two different things. So something can be logical, it can be efficient, it can be compliant, and still be confusing and overwhelming for the person on the other side of the desk. So this is about recognizing that systems can make sense to the people who build them, but not always necessarily to the people who are using them. So I think staff, as staff, we understand the forms, we understand the sequence, we understand the questions that we ask because we're inside the system. So of course we understand that. Now, if you're brand new staff, you'd be like, "Why are you doing this?" Because sometimes it takes new people to come in and go, "Oh, this is crazy." Anyway, so when while it makes sense to us, sometimes it does not make sense to the customer. So when we map journeys, we're not, asking, does this make sense to us? Because what we're trying to do is really answer the question, what does this feel like to someone who is encountering this for the very first time? Or even in the middle of the program, like each thing that they encounter is new to them, whether it's like, working with a particular staff person on, expanding their business, or whether or not, it's working with business services to try to help me find a job. That's different than the assessment unit. So each thing is a little different. So I wanted to spend 1 minute talking about something that we don't always name explicitly, but I think has a real impact on participation and outcomes. And that's what people say about your program and when you're not in the room. So in public programs, word on the street really does matter. People talk to friends, family members, coworkers, community partners. They share their experiences, good and bad, and oftentimes just in really informal ways, telling a story. So when the experience feels confusing or overwhelming or in any way disrespectful, people don't just disengage quietly, they oftentimes warn others. And when the experience feels supportive and clear and respectful, people are more likely to recommend the program. They show up consistently and they encourage others among their friends and colleagues to participate. So it's not really about marketing, although marketing is a part of everything, but it is a part of building trust. And so trust in public systems, and think especially right now, is really fragile. So when people feel like they're being shuffled through a process that they don't understand, trust erodes fairly quickly. And once it's lost, it's really, really difficult to rebuild. So what customer journey mapping is going to do is it's going to help us to understand why people feel the way they do about the program. And it gives us a way to identify moments that shape those perceptions, even small moments that staff might not even realize themselves are happening. So over time, improving all these moments changes the story that people will tell about the program in the community. And that story influences who shows up, who stays engaged, who succeeds. And so, I think like worrying about word on the street really does matter. So, with that in mind, I want to shift and start looking at how customer journey mapping actually works in practice and how hopefully you'll be able to use it with your team or in your training. So, the um, pull that up. We're going to look at the process, the mapping process. So we've talked about why it matters. Let's walk through again how it actually works. So this is what it's a lot more structured than I probably have made it sound, but that's a good thing because as I show you the structure, it'll be easy to replicate. So at a very high level, at the highest level, customer journey mapping has 6 parts. First, you pick a persona, and that's going to be the kind of customer that we're mapping for. Next, you're going to list two up there, the touch points. And those are the moments where the customer actually interacts with the program. And then we're going to capture what is the customer thinking at that touch point? What are they thinking at each point that they interact with us? After that, we're going to note how are they feeling? Are they feeling positive? Are they feeling negative? Are they neutral? Are they frustrated? Are they angry? Are they elated? What is the emotion that they're feeling during that particular touch point? Then what we do is we use all that to identify pain points. That's where confusion, that's where friction, that's where dropping off, quitting, ghosting us, that's where that shows up. And then we finally decide what to prioritize to improve. And so we put it all in this box designing solution. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through each one of these steps, step by step. And you don't even need to be an expert to do this well. All you need to do, anybody needs to do, is slow down and stay focused on the customer's experience. I and I know I said this before. I said it at the live training, and I'll say it again now. This is the point at where I have to take my shoes off and I have to walk a mile in the customer's shoes. I have to be them. I have to feel what they feel, think what they think, looking at the system as a customer would, not as how as a staff person might. So, is that all clear up to this point? I don't know if anybody, if I don't actually have chat pulled up on mine, or maybe if there was a chat, it would pull up. But if hopefully, or if there's any questions, Amy, you could let me know.
Yep, I'll
Otherwise,
let
I
you know.
will. Anything?
There's nothing in the chat at this time.
Okay. All right. I'm going to move on then. Okay. And feel free. You can stop me. Those of you who know me will know then I'll go on and on and on about that and we'll never get through the webinar. Just kidding. Anyway, before we talk about why personas are useful, I want to be practical about how to just create one. So we'll create it and then we'll talk about why you want one. First, what you do is you pick out one customer type. So not everyone, not the whole system, not everybody that we serve. You ask in the group, if you're doing a training or whatnot, who are we mapping today? Like, are we going to map a job seeker, a business owner, a returning participant, somebody who maybe was in the program before, for whatever reason it didn't work. Now they, come back a year later. But you're dividing your group, your customer base into distinct groups that have distinct needs. And you can see what I've tried to do here. This is high level. I mean, okay, maybe I should say it's a brief level, not high level. On the left-hand side, I have some participant examples. Dislocated workers, I think we could all agree, they're different than out-of-school youth. Although you could be a dislocated worker and an out-of-school youth at the same time. But for the most part in our programs, we consider them to be different. Out-of-school youth are different than in-school youth. What their concerns are, what they're all about, how they perceive things, that's different than an adult. Most of the adults in the programs are on the economically struggling side. A trade adjustment impacted worker is oftentimes even different than a dislocated worker. And some of the services that they get are different, much more robust, much richer. And those are all different than older workers. So you have to identify who is it that we want to be as we look through the system, because not all of those people are going to look at it the same. And then I put on the business side, it could be a small business owner. That's different than a corporate business. It could be the owner operator. Maybe this is a business that's looking at expansion. Maybe it's an employer who's just new to public programs. They don't know enough about them, never used them, never heard of them, and are willing to take a dive into our system, not like a dive, like a boxing dive. Anyway, I could be a repeat employer. Somebody's used this in the past, or you could segment by industry. But what you want to do is you want to like pick who are we mapping today? Who is it that we want to walk through the program being? And then you ground that in what you already know. So as a team or as a group, if you're working with a group, you talk about why does this kind of person or this kind of customer, why did they even come to our program in the first place? What pressures are they under? What is it they're trying to accomplish? What's their goal? What are some of the challenges that they face, with in their lives or with using our program? What tends to confuse them? What tends to frustrate them? You're not guessing. You're just pulling experiences from all of the staff. And I'm going to show you an example here in a second of two uh, personas. So the third thing is that I want to say, so first, pick a customer. Second, ground it in what you already know. Third, just keep it simple. If you're debating details, you're probably adding way too much. A persona doesn't need a really long backstory or a perfect profile. You just need enough detail so that the team can think consistently about this person's experience. And so you're really using the persona as a lens, not a label. The persona isn't the answer, it's just a tool that we use to walk through the touch points, the thoughts, the emotions, the pain points, the solutions. So let's look at two examples and we'll talk about why. I think that they're important. So those of you who are in my training before, you've met Ned. I'm going to introduce you to a second one that you haven't met, but I think personas make it much easier to just step out of our staff roles and into the customer experience. So, because it's much easier to ask in the group and as we're going through touch points and their thoughts and their emotions and like how would somebody react if I can say, how would Ned feel about this? It's just better than how would customers in general. So customers is abstract, a persona is concrete. So here is Ned. Just a couple things. I won't say much about him because you'll get the slide. You could read it on your own. But he's a father. He's struggling financially. He cares deeply about his kids. He wants to be able to do fun things with them. He wants to be able to get them things. He does have some challenges in his background, and one of the ones you'd see in one of the first paragraphs is, some legal issues that are going to need to be factored in to his plans. And that's also going to influence how he looks at stuff. He is worried about getting a job that he doesn't like and might get stuck in. And in the orange box, they even indicate it's not his first experience in a program. So he's kind of suspicious already of people making false promises because he went to training before, did not end up getting a job in that industry. And so, is a little suspicious, but, we're going to need to work around that. Anyway, just by reading that and like having this pic in my mind, hopefully you guys do too. I sort of feel like I know Ned. I've met Ned before. He is a compilation of lots of characteristics of the people that we've served. He's not like a single individual. You're taking like an average of the characteristics of the people that you serve. So what I see is that it becomes easier to stay grounded in that person's perspective as I move through the journey. So like I actually, this is me, and not everybody does this. I like including a visual because the simple visual, it just represents who the person might be. It isn't like for me, it's not a decoration, it's an anchor that helps everybody stay grounded in that customer's shoes. So anyway, what happens is when you're creating a persona, you'll also note differences in perspectives across staff roles. Intake staff, case manager, supervisors, they probably all see a different slice of the experience and of the person. So when you bring all of that together around one persona, it's easier. What as we'll see as we move through, gaps are easier to see, and friction points are a little easier to see because you've got a lot of people feeding in information. So the goal here, just to be clear, is not to stereotype people. The goal is to reflect what staff actually see and experience day to day. So, if as we're moving through, if a staff person said, as we're doing the journey mapping, well, wait a minute, how would this feel or how would this land for Ned? Then the persona is doing its job. So that's on that side. Let me show you a second example. Maybe not as quite as colorful, but because I think some of you work directly with businesses or will be working with teams who work with businesses. This persona is Mark. He's a business owner deciding whether to expand or relocate to Illinois. Before we look at touch points, we have to look at clear picture of who Mark is. So Mark is focused on growth. Again, I'm not going to read them all to you, but he's also weighing risk. He doesn't, within his own corporation, within his own thing, he doesn't want to, make a bad choice that makes him look or make it look bad on him. So he's going to weigh risk. He cares about timelines, about responsiveness, whether someone follows through with him. And he's deciding pretty quickly whether or not engaging feels worth the effort. So the details here, I want you to see, are very different than Ned, but the process is exactly the same. Businesses also move through experiences, just like Ned will. They make decisions. They disengage when things feel confusing, fragmented, slow. And so, anyway, so, you start by creating this persona because then you have a shared picture of who you are mapping. And so then after we know who we're mapping, then we're going to look at how this person actually comes in contact with the program. And so those are going to be our touch points. So touch points are a single they're the moments, let me say it that way. They're the moments that customers actually interact with your program. The things they see, the things they hear, the things that they participate in. We're going to look at a job seeker, and then I do want to let you know we are going to switch the lens and we're going to look at the employer side. But for a job seeker like Ned, things might include, and trust me, this is very abbreviated. We'll talk about that. This could go across an entire wall in a office or a whiteboard. But for our job seeker, Ned, maybe is calling in for information. He signs in at the front desk when he comes in. He has to, I don't know, making this up, attend an orientation session. He's going to meet with a case manager. He's going to get reminders or follow-ups. But each touch point kind of shapes how Ned feels about the program and whether he believes it is worth continuing that, price value or a risk value. So these moments stuck together, they all stuck together, they're stacked together over time to form this overall experience. And that experience then influences engagement, follow through, outcomes. So as we map Ned's journey, we're trying to capture well, we're not trying to capture every single possible interaction. Oh, somebody called him, somebody sent him a yeah, email. But you don't have to have every email or every internal step, but you need enough of the details to understand, like, what is the normal process that a person goes through, where things will feel very clear or where they feel confusing, where Ned might feel supported, where he might feel overwhelmed, where he might hesitate or disengage. The goal here is visibility. It's not really perfection. What I find is interesting is when I have staff do this from like their agencies, when they all work in the same agency, sometimes in the same unit. You actually find out when you're mapping like this and you're trying to identify touch points that staff in the same units all do it different ways. And so there isn't consistency, which to me is a little, I mean, I recognize, we're going to have different people and they're going to do different things, but it's a little problematic because it's hard to make changes that are going to impact outcomes if everybody's doing it their own way. So it seems like if we know that something is a best practice, then that should be what that touch point is. So anyway, when creating the customer journey map, sometimes, and that's what I have down here in green, is that sometimes staff mention internal things like entering data. Well, this is where we were, we put the information in the MIS, or this is where we're reviewing the files, or, this has got to go over to, a supervisor who, has to make sure it's all correct, like an intake form or something before we can actually enroll them. Those tasks matter. I'm not minimizing them, but they're not touch points because Ned doesn't not experience them. He doesn't experience them directly. And when we're walking through, we are walking through like we are a customer. I do not know what they do behind the desk at Starbucks. I don't know how they make, even though I used to work at McDonald's, I can't tell you like what their order system is or how the cooks back there know to make a cheeseburger with no ketchup. I have no idea what the process is. I don't want to know. So we're looking at it only from Ned's point of view. So we want to keep this map centered on him. So when I identified touch points, you start at the beginning, about when he first hears at the program, and you move step by step to the end. And you just keep asking, what is this customer doing at this moment? And I want you to note, you write one touch point down per note. And those are those sticky notes. Don't analyze them yet. You don't need to just capture them. So before we move on, and I will show you the business one, but before we want to move on, I want to flag something I see a lot when teams are starting to map journeys. There is a tendency, which I just said, but to put too much information on a single post-it note. Like if you were mapping a simple dinner out, you wouldn't write down 8 Mexican food. You would break it down. Parking, walking in, being seated, getting menus, ordering, receiving the food, paying the check. Like there are lots of steps. That same idea applies here. We're again, not writing down every single email or telephone call, but we don't want one post-it note to be trying to do too many things. So instead of writing like intake or case management as one big step, you have to break that down into key moments inside that process. So that's how you capture what the journey actually feels like. So when teams do this, that's where I'm saying all this interesting stuff shows up. You're going to notice different case managers are handling the exact same thing in different ways. And so for right now, all you do is note the difference. But because the question of what's the best practice should come later, the point really is just slow down and ask for detail because you'll learn a lot about what is working and what is not for the customer. I want to shift quickly and focus on Mark. And so Mark is our business. And so here's his journey. You're going to notice on this, I use 2 rows, and I want you to pretend that they were all stretched out and it was 8 all across the top. I just used it to fit it all on the slide, and I thought I'd be able to share with you that how would you do it right. So in a real world, they'd be spread. But for Mark, these touch points covered the journey from his initial interest all the way to the decision to move forward or walk away. So each of these moments, each single touch point is a decision point. Mark is asking himself, is this clear or confusing? Is this coordinated or fragmented? Does this feel helpful or does this just feel bureaucratic? I mean, these signals, they matter. So they influence whether Mark is going to stay engaged or look somewhere else. So just like Ned, we don't have to capture everything, but we need enough to understand the experience, what it feels like, and where moments of hesitation might start to show up. So if like your map is going to help you see patterns, and you'll see this when we move to the next step or the next 2 steps, if it's detailed enough. And so once these touch points are visible, then it's easy to step in Mark's shoes and ask, what's he thinking at each of these moments? Because that's where the real insights start to emerge. I do want to tell you that these steps oftentimes, like going through and putting down the touch points, it often does produce a lot of post-it notes. And sometimes, like even in the training some of you guys were at, it's like could be 30 or more. You're trying to do beginning to the end. That is normal. The goal is not a perfect map. It's just to make everything visible so all staff are seeing the same thing at the same time, and we're looking at it from the customer's point of view because that's when improvements become possible. So now, then, our next step is to kind of return to the persona in our early example, Ned. And then once you've identified and you've sequenced all those touch points, the next step is to walk through that journey. And you're going to slow down and you are going to try to imagine what is Ned thinking at that moment. Not what we hope he's thinking, but what realistically is going through his head. How do we know this, by the way? Because clients say stuff all the time, or customers. Well, there we go. I have to do all this, or how long is this going to take? Or, well, when I get my job? Like, just in comments, they reveal kind of, what's behind the scene, what it is what it is that they are thinking. So, encourage everyone as you do this, and I'll make another point about this, to write the thought in the first person as if you are Ned. Because if you're writing it from our perspective, we're still staff. So, for example, when the staff introduces themselves and like shares the agenda, here's what we're going to try to cover today. Ned may be thinking, this staff person seems really nice. When they gather background information, he might think, well, that makes sense. They're trying to get to know me. But when we start discussing sensitive subjects, sensitive topics, he might think, well, that was really personal. I'm not sure I really like that. And the way that might come up, Ned might say, what do you need this for? Or why are you asking that? Which automatically tells me we haven't explained it well enough, or something's up. There is a bit of confusion, a bit of frustration. So that is why we're looking at the thoughts. So you'll notice one thing, I hope. I use different color sticky notes for the thoughts and write one thought per touch point. Don't worry about, again, whether or not the thought is right. If it's plausible, it belongs on the map. We can always refine it later. Right now, we're just capturing what might be going through his head. So, a common mistake, and I just want to expand this just a bit more. A common mistake is to write staff interpretations instead of participant thoughts. And I bring this up so that, yeah, if you're training, like show people an example of this because then I think they get it. A staff interpretation might be, well, let's look at this. Staff explains the program requirements, and maybe Ned is thinking, this sounds like a lot. I'm not sure I can actually do all this, his thought bubble. But the staff is saying the client feels overwhelmed by the program requirements. That is from a staff perspective. We want to be Ned's perspective. This difference matters because interpretations are our conclusions. Participant thoughts are their experience in that moment. So if we stay in their shoes, we capture their internal dialogue, what they're wondering, what they're worried about, and try to make sense of what is happening to them right then. So, because that level of specificity is something I can design around. Customers like this one where let's look at the last one, the on the blue. That Ned is saying, this feels so far away. I need help right now, not weeks from now. But the staff interpretation is our clients want immediate gratification of their needs and not long-term help. Um, so again, that's our interpretation, not what Ned is thinking. But I just want you to see that it's easier to design around I need help now than it is our clients are, want immediate gratification of their needs. Like if Ned feels like he needs help right now, I can design the system so it feels like he's getting help right now. The other is just too difficult. So that's the mental pivot that I'm saying that we're practicing here, moving away from what we think is happening to what participants might actually be telling themselves. And I'm telling you, having worked in this field for um, over 48 years, is that clients tell you all the time what they're thinking. We just have to listen for it. So let's spend a minute with Mark to see. And so what you're now going to think is that I definitely like now streamlined it just a bit. So Mark is thinking at that initial, he searches online for maybe Google's expand business in Illinois or something, and the website comes up. He's going to be thinking, is this information relevant to my situation? This looks promising. Or maybe he's looking, this sounds really complicated, or who do I even talk to about this? He submits an inquiry form. As soon as he submits the inquiry, he might, it could be set up so he immediately receives follow-up materials, checklist links, referrals. Oh, I think I did that one wrong. He'd be thinking, um, something like, I wonder how long, I'm sorry, I wonder how long this is going to take. So anyway, again, with Mark, we're going step by step through his process. Notice none of these thoughts are extreme. Mark isn't angry. He's just evaluating. Most disengagement does not happen because something goes like terribly wrong. It usually happens because people are uncertain or the value grows unclear. Small moments, just that's what I was saying earlier, stack up, hesitation grows, and eventually people just step away. So once we capture what people are thinking, and that again, a group activity, Then I wanted to look at the same, I'm sorry, the same distinction on the employer side using Mark. So again, we have these two statements. Businesses are impatient and they want fast responses. That's what staff think. That's that interpretation. The employer thought, though, is I don't know who this request is going to, how long this will take, or whether this is worth following up. Both of those probably would sound familiar if you work on the employer side, but here's the question to me that really matters is which one can you design around? You can't design around impatience. And once I label it that way, even back to clients are interested in immediate gratification of their needs, the problem feels like it belongs to the other person. In this case, it belongs to the employer, or immediate gratification. The problem belongs to Ned. Their attitude, their expectation, their personality, what is at fault? But I can't design around that. And in this case, I cannot design around somebody's impatience. What I can do is I can be a lot clearer about things like I can tell them right away if I know that that's like a point that gets in their way and causes hesitation, confusion, whatnot. I can make sure that we are very specific about what the timeline is. This, once you complete your application, it takes, 5 days for somebody to review it. We get back to you, or, it's 2 days, whatever it is, so that and then they understand. And then this will be the next step, that we make sure that people always know who to contact and when follow up is going to happen. So that again is that mental pivot, moving from labeling the customer, um, uh, to trying to outline what is the experience that they've had, what are they thinking about it. So once we've captured what Mark is thinking at each touch point, or what Ned is thinking, the next step is actually really simple. How do those thoughts make this person feel? And so I have, we've captured what they're thinking. If I connect those now to an emotion. So when someone has a thought, you, I, anybody, when you have a thought, it usually does create or pairs with a feeling. So our goal is to identify how is Ned or Mark likely feeling at each touch point. So customers can experience a wide range. That's on the left, of, curiosity, relief, frustration, embarrassment, hope, confusion. But instead of trying to label every possible emotion, we're just going to simplify it. And I'm simplifying it on purpose. We're going to group them into three categories. Positive, they're encouraged, they feel relieved, they like what they're hearing. Neutral, unsure, unclear. And then negative is that they are frustrated, they're anxious, they're overwhelmed, they're confused, whatever. So this keeps our focus on spotting patterns, not getting the exact emotion right, because that doesn't really matter. Is it positive? Is it neutral? Is it negative? So then what we do is, and in training that I do, I bring stickers that you can buy at Office Depot, Staples, wherever it is that you shop, Viking, not trying to promote any one business. And I try to buy green, just three different colors. I just like these because it's stop, go, people are familiar, but you can make them any color that you want. So now that you go back and you capture their thoughts, which we looked on a earlier slide, you read the thought and then you ask one simple question. How would that thought make the customer feel? You put a colored dot on that, on that touch point, green for positive, yellow for neutral, red for negative. Because sometimes, honestly, you're meeting customer expectations and sometimes you're not. And so this step helps you quickly see what is working and what is not. And this is going to set the stage for the next step, which is identifying and then making improvements on pain points. So I always recommend go with your first instinct. In terms of is that a positive and negative? I don't want to sit around like in the training groups and argue, like, oh, I think it's neutral. Oh, go with your first instinct. And then again, with what is Mark thinking? I'm only again using four of his touch points, and you have noticed that I did streamline it. So it's not about judging staff. It's not about assigning blame. Like if there's a red, it just sometimes, we meet expectations, sometimes we don't. We don't want to fix something that isn't broken. If there's a green on a touch point, then don't improve it. It's already okay. Because what we want to do, because we have limited resources, limited time, we want to fix the red ones. So once you step back, and I know that this is very small, but once you step back and you look at the full journey, the colors tell a story. What you'll see is up, down, like good experience, bad experience, people fall off. And so it is, kind of moves around. You can quickly see where the experience is working, where it's breaking down. And so this then is going to set us up for the next step, which is identifying those pain points and deciding where improvement efforts are going to have the biggest impact. I think that you can see that, or I hope that you can, that the pain points are going to be red. So that's why, like, it makes it kind of easy to see. So at this point, I did want to show you one thing, and I'm going to come back. We're going to talk about pain points. But I just wanted to pause to show you what this can all look like finished. I don't expect you to read this or study it. I just pulled a couple. Some are from things I've done, and others I pulled off of internet. If they look really neat, I pulled it off of internet. Wasn't one I did. It's purely for visual. I want you to see different journey maps. Different people do it different ways, but they're all created with sticky notes in different colors, either on a whiteboard or a display board. The kind you can buy at Office Depot that fold that teachers let kids do science projects on. As an aside, sticky notes are great because what happens is when you are doing touch points and when you are doing things, you will find that you forget stuff and you need to easily be able to move. Oh, it's like, wait a minute, we forgot about this process, and then we can move things around. It's just easier. And I like the project boards because then the journey map can be saved rather than like using up a wall and now we need that wall for something else. And so now we got to rip it all down. So the point isn't format or how neat it looks. The point is that what we're trying to do is externalize what's in not just our heads, what's in our customers' heads, the customer steps, their thoughts, their questions, and their reactions. So this is was just to help you picture what that is like. But what we've now done is we've gone through the whole process, or maybe a segment of the process, and you've identified places in the journey where customers are having a negative or an uncertain experience. So those are your pain points. That's the moments, again, that there's confusion, frustration, and we've identified those as being negative. And so it's really important, I think, for me to be kind of explicit right here. In any real customer journey map, there will almost always be multiple pain points. If a team is sitting together, working with a team, and they are looking at a journey and they do not see any frustration, any hesitation, any confusion, or any drop off anywhere, then that usually means the team needs to look a lot more closely because there is no journey that is perfect. People don't disengage for no reason. If customers stop responding, stop showing up, quietly drop off, there is friction somewhere, even if nobody complains about it, very loudly. So in these examples, I have only pulled out one pain point to just keep things simple. In the real world, you will almost always, again, identify several, and that's expected. So here's the key rule. The goal is not to fix everything. The goal is to decide which things to focus on first. We're still kind of diagnosing at this point. We're not even designing solutions yet. But a common mistake is to prioritize pain points in the order that they appear in the journey. So it's right at the initial stage, we would prioritize that. That feels logical, but it's not necessarily the most effective way of handling it. Just because something happens early doesn't mean it's the most important thing to fix. Instead, what we want to do is prioritize pain points based on impact, not based on sequence. So, one simple approach I've used when I was working with an individual agency is we've just looked at each pain point on its own, and I asked team members to rank them from the most serious to the least serious. I've done this where I've given everybody, a different color dot and they get to vote with dots. And we just looked at which pain points had the most dots. And those are the ones that we're going to work on because the pain points that consistently rise to the top across, different staff perspectives are often the ones that are driving the drop, the frustration, the disengagement. So that's worth, in my mind, sort of tackling those first. So, so we have that, but so not all pain points then are equal. Some are annoyances. They irritate, they confuse customers, but people still move forward. Others are something, and I just want to distinguish here, are called moments of truth. And moments of truth, those are points where customers lose motivation, disengage, or drop off entirely. They are pain points that directly impact program performance. So it is a pain point. It's a pain point where the person, almost always decides to continue or disengage. So just, think about it for a second. Just take a few seconds and think about your own program. Is there one point in the process where people most often disengage? Where do they stop responding? Where do they not show up, quietly disappear? You don't have to share it, but just notice it. If one came to mind, when something comes to mind fast, that's usually a moment of truth, not because it's dramatic, but because it just directly impacts whether people will get going. So, to identify a moment of truth, these are some of the questions that you might ask. Like, are we losing customers at this step? Do people leave this step less motivated than when they arrived? Do we hear resistance? Again, always be listening with that third ear. Do we hear frustration or negative comments? If the answer is yes, that's a strong signal that pain point deserves attention. So, a common example, like I get, and I know this is, well, what I was just saying is like, don't necessarily start at the beginning, but is the occurrence of no shows for the first appointment industry wide. No shows hover around 50%. That tells us something really important. When people call, they have a need and they believe that the program might help. However, something happens between that initial contact and the appointment that causes them not to follow through. Because we don't meet no-shows, I mean, never meet them in person, I don't really get direct feedback on what happened. So in cases like that, I have to use data, I have to use experiences, my own experience, observations to make informed guesses about what might be happening. So anyway, just to summarize where we're at on this, don't prioritize pain points necessarily chronologically. Prioritize them based on seriousness and impact. Focus on things that you would consider to be moments of truth. These are ones that like people will walk out or they'll continue, and use team discussions to figure out to guide those decisions, because what that's going to do is keep your improvement efforts focused, realistic, effective. And so once you've identified your pain points, which ones you want to focus on, the next step is to try to understand them just a little bit more deeply. And so at this point, it's really easy to try to jump, right into solutions. But I'm just going to recommend you slow down and deepen your empathy for what the customer is actually experiencing, because before all we did was we captured one thought that per touch point, and we labeled it yellow, red, or green. That was just a starting point. in real life, customers oftentimes have many thoughts at once, not just one. And so this step is about expanding those thoughts, especially around, again, pain points. So we understand what's really going on. So, again, a common problem is slipping into those staff interpretations, and that's what we don't want to do. So I, wrote some of these down. Is maybe the customers like, I didn't write down when they said that meeting was, now I forget what they said, or I don't know if I even want to go there, I'm not sure this is going to work for me, or now I'm not sure what they can do for me that I can't just do for myself, or I didn't hear anything that interested me, it didn't really seem like it would meet my needs. So you know, whether or not, or not whether or not, it's that I want to take this pain point, and what I want to do is I want to work on it. I want to magnify it a bit, brainstorm all the thoughts and that the persona might be having at that moment. Again, you write them in first person, group, you can group similar thoughts together, look for patterns. And then once you've done that, you can compare those thoughts to how you want your customer to feel as they move through your system. The gap between how they're feeling and how I want them to be feeling tells you where your best opportunities for improvement are. And so I think that helps. It also helps you to make easier design decisions in terms of what those solutions might work. So then you're going to do, so now we've expanded, like we know, have pretty good sense of where the customer is, how Ned feels, what's going on. And so I just want to do a real quick check to make sure that we are ready for solutions. Some people want to jump to solutions right away. I want to understand what's going on first. So it's just a quick gut check. If we can answer yes to all these, do we understand what the customers are thinking and feeling? Have we identified the real problem beneath the symptom? Have we expanded the customer's thoughts around the pain point, not just captured one? Do we understand the impact of that pain point on engagement and follow up? Have we named the underlying problem? I didn't write it down. I don't know if this like has any value to me. And we've decided what pain point that we want to that we want to focus on first. If the answer is yes, then we're ready to start work on solutions. If the answer is no, that's a signal. Slow down because we're not because we're behind. It's just because jumping ahead usually leads to solutions that are in search of a problem. So moving methodically through those steps, it doesn't have to be belabored, but we have to make sure that everybody's seeing the problem clearly so that we design a better fit. Then, so reality check, we're ready to move to solutions. Then our six is brainstorming solutions. So up to this point, we've really been looking at understanding the journey, the thoughts, the emotions, the pain points. We're diagnosing. Again, we're not prescribing yet, but now what we're going to do is shift gears. So this is the point that we move to generating ideas on how could this experience be better at this particular touch point, not across the whole thing, only at this pain point. So this step intentionally, when we're looking for solutions, we want to go wide. So sometimes you hear this as, it's called brainstorming, ideation, envisioning. The term you use doesn't matter. What matters is that we have to create space for ideas without trying to evaluate them. See, one of the biggest mistakes, and when I was doing training in Illinois, and I've seen it elsewhere as well, people are working in teams. People, like somebody will come up with an idea, and as soon as they come up with the idea, it's like people are already evaluating it. And when you evaluate it and it's evaluated on the negative, it makes me, as the person who's given the idea, not want to give any more ideas because the idea I gave just got shot down. So that is a huge mistake. It's like if it's an idea, write it down. We can evaluate them later. And then another big mistake people make is just jump to the first reasonable solution and go, okay, we're done. Because that means that we miss better options that only emerge, when people have room to think and to really like look at it creatively. So the goal here, what I'm saying is volume and variety. It's not polish. So in my experience, I don't know, when people see the journey, ideas just start to surface like almost automatically. They notice things they have not noticed before, small moments where we could make a change and it would make a big difference. So, your role, if you're training, is to direct attention and capture those ideas, not decide which ones are good or go, we're not allowed to do that, or we don't have money for that. Because at this stage, we're not committing to anything. We're just what are all the possible ways that we could improve this experience? So here's my ground rules. Go for volume, withhold judgment. Creativity dies when ideas are criticized as they're born. Build on ideas. It's hard. I've actually, over my life, probably the last 15, 20 years, I've tried to train myself. I stop myself when I say but, and instead I say yes and try to just get rid of the word but. As soon as you say but, you've erased everything you said before. That's a really good idea, but, and then it doesn't matter what you say after that because what you're saying is it was not a really good idea. Find alternatives, come up with lots of variations on ideas. And so, variation, like, well, you could do that, or we could do it this way. That's an and. Refrain again from censoring. So, if it sounds crazy, so what? Put it on the board and then be visual, flip charts so that, we're talking about ideas as they come. So, I want you to see that I've kind of done that on one of these just to give you an example. And that is from pain point to possible solution. So this slide sort of shows what it would look like to work through that particular pain point step by step without, again, jumping straight to a one solution. We're going to start with this pain point, makes initial appointment, and then no shows. So before fixing, we paused and we asked questions. What might be going on from the customer's point of view? What could they be thinking or feeling? So, and I showed you all that because that where to me empathy really matters. I've got to stand in their shoes. I've got to look at the world the way they do. We're not blaming them. We're not blaming staff. We're just making these educated guesses. So what I did here is I told here's my analysis of the problem. I mean, if I was in a group, this would be the group's analysis, and I would not be controlling that. Our customers are well known for missing appointments. They're well known for not writing down appointments. And by the way, just as an aside, it's an executive skill. This is an executive skill that a lot of our clients don't have. And so they don't have organizational skills. That's an executive skill. We need to help them to remember and to follow through. During the initial phone call, we also have not been focused on the value and benefit of our program. We've treated the phone call as a simple transaction to set up an appointment. We don't provide them enough information or enough motivation to our customers to make them think that coming to this appointment is a priority. So that is how I've defined the problem in like looking at um, uh, the touch points and talking about the pain points and trying to understand it more. And so then on the right side, I just brainstormed, okay, and I did this by myself, is like, here's a list of possible solutions. Send them a reminder card, text them, email them, ask them to get a pen and paper before giving details, call them the day before the meeting as a reminder. And again, some of you could be sitting there thinking, well, I don't have time to call them. We're not evaluating yet. We're just getting ideas down. Eliminate appointments, just have walk-ins. Keep track of the number of people who call and make appointments versus the number of people who come in so that we could have better data next time. And avoid talking on that phone call about everything the agency needs and nothing about what the client needs. So So anyway, those are possible solutions. And again, have not evaluated them yet. So then we work as a group. By the way, this you could take all day to do something like this. I've done customer journey mapping where it takes a day. I've done it in half days. We've also done smaller segments, like we're only doing, I don't know, assessment, or we're only doing case management, or we're only doing job search. And so you're just doing a small slice. And so there aren't as many touch points within there, so you can get through this. Or I've also done it where I was actually working with the demonstration project, and they had to do step by step over, it was a series of 2 or 3 months. They had various staff meetings, and they would just pick up and do the next step at the next staff meeting. And then they had to report out. It's a much bigger issue than I'm telling you, or it's a process. Was an issue, but Health and Human Services was making the programs go through this. So anyway, so now we have all these ideas. And so at this point, hopefully you have a long list of possible solutions. The next step is deciding what goes first, um, what to try first, not what's perfect. And we can't fix everything. We don't have enough time, like to do, like I said, every pain point or every one of those ideas. So you have to look at what is realistic and what is likely to have impact. So a simple way of thinking about this is just to ask the questions. I mean, I have that on the X and the Y axes, is how much impact do I think this would have? Is it high value for us or is it low value? Is this going to make a big impact or like probably not much? And then how feasible is it for us to implement this right now? What we want to do is do the things that are in the upper right, do those first. They're high value, they're highly feasible, not going to be hard to do. And then if it's very high value, but it's not really feasible, maybe I put that on like the list of things you do second. Because some ideas, I'll give you this, may have high potential impact, but they are very difficult to execute. Here's an example of high value, low feasibility, at least at this point. Across many programs, staff quickly identify state forms or federal forms. Required processes are confusing, repetitive, they're not customer friendly. From a customer perspective, simplifying those forms would have enormous value, could reduce confusion, shorten intake, lower frustration, improve follow-up. But in reality, changing those kind of systems or mandated process, it requires a lot of approvals, policy changes, system updates, and they're really outside the control of frontline staff, and it could take years. It doesn't mean it's a bad idea. It's a great idea. I promote the idea, but it's a high value change with low immediate feasibility. So, in customer journey mapping, these ideas don't disappear. They just get parked, or they're on a back burner, and we're working with them, working through that process. But I know it's going to take a long time, and we're not going to get immediate results. But they're on a much slower track, so the ideas aren't rejected. They're just parked because they're going to require authority, coordination beyond what we're going to be able to do, like at these sessions. We don't control that. So you are going to again look for ideas, high value, highly feasible. Like in this case, it could be, clearer expectations, better prep before the forms are completed. Maybe it's improved follow-up, things that we can control. So uh, we will let me go on to this. So then once we pick what we want to change, or pick a change and what we want to try, to me, the next step is to be clear about what you think is going to happen, and how we know it will work. And that to me is where you come up with the hypothesis. It doesn't have to be fancy. It's not academic, although I know the word hypothesis sounds academic. It's not. It's just a clear way of saying, here's what we're trying, and here's what we expect to see. So a simple hypothesis has what we're changing, what we think, what we think that change will affect, and how we'll know whether or not it helped or not. So, for example, just one example, we think that sending a short, clear message, text message, before the first appointment explaining what to expect and what to bring will reduce no-shows. We will know if helping more people, we will know if it's helping if more people show up for that first appointment over the next few months. So I just want you to notice it does a few important things. It helps us all be on the same page. Everyone knows what the goal is and what success will look like. And secondly, I think it keeps expectations realistic. We're not saying it's going to fix everything and every single person now is going to show up. We're saying, I think this might help. Let's try and let's see. So a hypothesis really kind of turns improvement into learning into instead of guesswork. And if it works, great, build on it. If it doesn't, get rid of it. Adjust, try something new, or try something else. And that's why I like setting deadlines. I mean, I like saying, we're going to test this for 2 months or 3 months and see if it makes a difference. If it doesn't make a difference, then make it go away because otherwise, that's where I was saying earlier in the program, we just make things complex by layering, layering, and layering. And sometimes you got to get rid of something because there's no more bandwidth for adding new stuff. So either way, whether or not we learn it worked or we learn that did not work, we are making progress on what we're seeing and what impact it is having. So even though, or even when we've thought about like choosing solutions, we won't always get it right the first time. Doesn't matter. That's why we don't treat, again, changes as permanent decisions. We treat everything like it is an experiment. And so once we've selected a solution, we've written a hypothesis, the real work begins when we try it in the real world. So set a period of time, like I said, 60 days, 90 days. During that time, everybody has to pay attention. What's actually happening or how are customers responding? What are staff noticing on the ground? Is it working? Isn't it? So you want to look at data where you can, but also, again, listen with that third ear, and then you adjust. Sometimes idea worked, sometimes it didn't. And all of that, again, like I said, is valuable. So this is the test, learn, adjust cycle, and it's what connects customer journey mapping to, in a sense, continuous quality improvement. It allows us to make progress without needing everything to be perfect up front, without locking ourselves into changes that don't actually help. It's just small test, real feedback, better decisions. So I want to end kind of where we started. Um, with real people. Customer journey mapping is not about making your program perfect. It's not about, again, redesigning everything at once. And it's definitely not about adding more work for staff. It's just about being more intentional with the work that we're already doing. Most programs, like I said, do not struggle because staff don't care or they don't work hard enough. They struggle because the system is complex and it's hard to see sometimes that complexity from the inside. Customer journey mapping gives us a way to step outside, look at it through the customer's eyes, and ask a different set of questions. Where does the experience support success? Where does our system unintentionally get in the way? And where would a small change make the biggest difference? So hopefully, at the end of this, well, depending on who all is in the room, but even if you did this outside of here, everybody will have a shared language. What's a pain point? What's a touch point? I'm sorry, excuse me. What's the emotion? You should have a repeatable process. There were 6 steps. I've gone through them. Practical tools that you should be able to take back to your team. You don't need to fix everything. You don't need perfect data. You just need to start paying attention, all of us, to the experience and be willing to test, learn, and adjust. Because I think that when programs work with human behavior instead of fighting against it, engagement improves, outcomes improve, and trust grows. And that's the work that we do. So before I wrap up, and I just want to say thank you really for the work that you do and for just being willing to slow down and really see the experience through the customer's eyes. And that is what turns customer-centered design from a concept into practice. The work you do supporting job seekers, businesses, communities matters. I know it's not easy. I've spent my career in this field, so I do appreciate your time. And so just like the coffee example that we started with, small moments really do shape how people feel and whether they will come back. And with that, I am happy to take questions or hear any reflections um, or anything that you just want to throw out. You can use chat, you can unmute. And again, I will send, as soon as we're finished, I will send a copy of these slides to Amy within minutes. Anybody? Oh, I see that there is some chat. Welcome back. I have. Okay.
And say, as you're reading through those, Jody, I do want to open the floor. Sarah, is there anything I know you've been responding to the chat. Is there anything you'd like to kind of say in closing?
Yeah, I know a lot of the questions, and I want to thank Jody Sue Kelly for coming and talking to our group. Um, a lot of the questions in the chat are focused on, how each trainer can have dual roles. I know David asked, as we move through learning the system, trainers will have to have their local area hat on and anticipate questions that career planners may have, but then we'll also have to have our customer hat on to ensure that the system makes sense from both angles. Um, that will be you know, a lot to juggle, but we're hoping with so many people at the table that those questions will kind of come along kind of naturally, and we'll make sure that both kind of streams of thought are attended to, both in how we're learning about things and then also the training. I know there's a kind of a hypercare question in the chat that's pretty specific to 2.0. We understand that we're not going to be able to answer all of the questions that come up, during training. That's just the nature of when things go live. So we're working on a plan for hypercare that goes after July 1. But I think what I really took away from this presentation was when we're going through the different modules and systems and things like that, to think about what are normal pain points in the previous process. Is the new process helping us get to a better outcome? And why you think so, and then how we can translate that to the people we're training. And then if there are issues or pain points that we think that the new system or policy is presenting to customers, let's talk about it and make sure that we have it right before the system goes live. So I hope that answered a lot of the questions in the chat. And now, if you have more general or specific ones for Jodie Sue Kelly, I'll kick it back to her.
Well, can I say something? How Jody didn't get back home. What you were just saying there, Sarah, with us trainers being able to answer the questions and stuff like that. Some of us, our trainers, not going to have a caseload. We basically is training them to know how to work the system. Would it also be the case manager, the job center staff, the business service team to also understand some of these questions that they could give the customers the answer? and shouldn't just be rely on just the trainer. Back in the days when me and Jim Pot used to talk and stuff, in his beginning days, I remember when he started and how developed he got throughout the years, is that we all got to learn. You can't depend on just one person, the trainers, to have all the answers. If you're in the system, and one of my questions going to be, when I start doing this thing, how long you been using IWDS? How long you been a case manager? You should know the eligibility, the requirements, the enrollment aspect, the assessment. We shouldn't have to go right back to ABC. They should have some kind of rudimental understanding of what they need to do within the system. Am I not correct on my analysis, you think?
No, I think you're definitely correct. Our goal, both with the training for the regional trainers and the training that the local areas will receive, is that we're creating kind of a network of trainers. You'll receive the same training that you'll end up giving. And then, therefore, hopefully, we're creating, again, a strong network of understanding of both policy and procedure. We understand that there's going to be varying degrees of where people are at in their understanding of WIOA policy, and kind of augment or supplement that understanding with both things that are automated in the system and then resources that are available. So I don't think that any successful training relies on just one trainer or 8 trainers for a whole state. I think the goal is and will remain kind of a universal understanding of both the policy and practice and why we kind of got there, which is this customer-centered viewpoint to ensure that we're removing those pain points, or as many of them as we can. So I don't know if I answered your question entirely, but
Yeah, that's good. I just wanted to make sure we all understand what we're stepping into, and I just don't want us trainers to feel like we have the answers for everything, and because yeah, DCO, Chris, Paula, Mark, and them back in the days, Jim, some other older people that I know, and it's always good to get it from DCO because hey, I don't want to start saying something then DCO say, oh no, we got a policy against this. Oh, we're going to create a policy because we want it done this way. My thing was always with DCO, always let us all be on the same page. And I love it that IWDS 2.0 is becoming that way, where everybody for all local areas is going to be on the same page. So I just wanted to put that out there and make sure, don't put the burden on just us, the trainers. Make sure it's also the responsibility of the case manager, the business service, the job center to understand and learn what they're doing now. Don't just, oh, let me check. Have some kind of rudimentary understanding of what's going on. But you did answer the question, and thank you, Sarah. I appreciate you.
no problem, Robert. And I know Mark has his hand raised. I think I've heard some.
Yeah, just briefly to that point, Robert. Certainly we aren't going to leave anyone out to dry on their own. We're learning as much as you guys are on some of these concepts. Um, and I agree, we need to identify how we can be consistent across the state so that, that's why the training's being done the way it is, I think. I don't want to speak too much to that, leave that to Sarah. But one thing we are doing, and David and Crystal, maybe some others on the call today, we've got a technical assistance work group on performance specifically, not as wide ranging as this is going to be, that we bring local areas together so that we can get your thoughts on how this affects the local area so that we're not speaking at a state level, all the time. We're not out there every day like you all are. So it's very helpful to us to get that input. And I think what we try to do in that work group as we develop technical assistance in other areas that everyone can do is to rely on our experience and our, you guys have a lot of experience. And I think sometimes you have the answer, you just don't feel confident expressing it. So you come to us at the state level and go, hey, can you verify this? I hope our trainings, especially in performance, are building the confidence that you guys do know what you should be training on and should be sharing But certainly, if you need to come to us, you can. Again, I always try to share that with everyone to go, hey, trust yourself. There's going to be a lot of gray areas that we don't even have the answer in a clear manner to give to you. And we appreciate you reaching out to us, but I think a lot of times you are able to manage that on your own.
Thanks, Mark. And I know Jody, David's note in the chat was really helpful. I don't know if you wanted to talk for a moment on that.
Me or David?
Or you or
David.
David, either
David's
one.
fine. No, I want to hear David.
Okay.
Hi, Sarah. Hi, Jody.
Hey.
I just what really appreciated in the live training with you, Jody, how you made us aware of the emphasis on the why. So if somebody's applying for assistance to become an LPN, we often make that the whole focus of our assessment is what they want to do. And we often fail to write down in our assessment notes why they want to do it. And I'm curious and hopeful that the new iWads 2.0 will allow for that, or even encourage career planner staff to ask the why, to record that. I think that's particularly important because of the amount of turnover we often have in the agencies, and that somebody may start their journey with one career planner, and the next career planner who takes over needs to know that why. And if it's not written down somewhere in a structured, consistent way, then the customer's going to be frustrated by the fact that the agency doesn't remember what the journey was all about.
Yep. David, our state team and members of our local discovery team, I think most of us went through the Jodie Sue Kelly training, the in-person. And so we took those lessons and have, especially the why, and have input them into the system in a way that we hope will ensure that the customer has a place, one, to make sure that they're asked what their why is. And then two, the system is able to document that. So to your point, if there's turnover, kind of where could someone reference that? We're going to be testing the system from now until it goes live. So if maybe there's an additional question, or we think that, hey, this may not quite get to it, or if there's a case note requirement for certain things to ensure that we are anchoring their journey, not just in the how they'll get there, but why they want to go, and then what could change once they get there. I think that's important to keep in mind. But I do know I have been a part of many conversations that are anchored in why are we asking this, and also are we asking the customer not only their training needs, but also like what are their goals and why it's important to them. So I'm excited for this group to kind of go through that to make sure that we're mapping to this great lesson.
You are going to send out the recording. My apology for getting it in late. My laptop broke at the wrong time. And good thing I had a backup, but I had to work with IT to get some setting properly back on my laptops. And I'm still working on it, but I told them I need to try to at least get this Zoom thing going and stuff. So my IT department was working with me. My old laptop just died, and I'm like, doesn't make sense to try to get a new one right now. And I just wanted to make sure I listened beginning part, maybe the first 20 minutes that I missed, just to hear what Jodie was talking about. Because I know she's a very good speaker and got a lot of good input, so I wanted to hear it.
Yep,
Thank you.
we will post that
We
recording.
will. Sorry, Sarah, I didn't mean to speak over you. We will share the recording and the slides, and Kelly has said that she'll post the recording link and the Trainer Hub page as well. So we'll make sure all of you can have this as a resource moving forward.
I did have a question, Jody, if you could help. So our regional trainer team, many of which who are on the call, they're tasked with being boots on the ground and understanding how this process will change, but then also, coming at it from a customer point of view, who they have worked with. Do you have any advice on when things are changing within procedures and how that might be new and difficult for potentially career planners, but ultimately is better for the customer and how to kind of talk to those maybe moments of friction?
I don't I don't know if this specifically answers it, but one of the things that I was thinking about is so you're rolling out a new system, and your new system is you've designed it or attempting to design it to be more customer focused than it has been before. And I wonder if when you're presenting this change, if the first thing that is necessary is to get people to buy in, the staff, the career planners to buy into, in a sense, what we were just talking about, the why are we doing this? And we're doing this about customers. Like they have to understand the philosophy. Um, it would seem to be more open to I mean, all of the changes are going to be what complex, are going to be difficult. I mean, you're asking me to change. And so I need to know why I'm doing that, because otherwise I'm just learning a new tool or, doing a new system. So I wonder if, and I don't know, you know the staff in the system, but if the first thing that I would want to present is with them is like why we're doing this. I mean, taking some of the concepts that we talked about here is that it's what we're trying to do is serve the needs of the customers. And here are, some specific things that we're trying to do where you guys have added the whys and all of that and why that is important. If I can get people to buy that, then the change, I think, can be a little easier.
That makes sense that we need to give our career planners a why, if the system is the how. So I think that's helpful. I don't know if anyone, and I know we have more than just regional trainers and core trainers on the call, but if anyone else has additional feedback or questions. Okay, Jody and
All
Amy,
right.
I'm hearing none. This was great, and I really think an awesome foundation as the group moves towards really reviewing that training content and policy and procedure. Um, on behalf of OET, thank you for really helping our journey along with this, and we're excited to keep it moving in the
Thank
customer-centered
you.
way.
Oh.
All right, thanks
Thank
everyone.
you all.